Welcome, welcome, welcome to the UpKeep Pledge Pros Podcast, a podcast dedicated to unmatched value and unwavering support for the community and our customers. Today, we have a UpKeep customer of several years who works for Mattr. We have the CMMS Administrator, Charlene Crocker. Charlene, welcome.
Thanks for having me.
You are very, very welcome. I know that our team has been working with your team for several years, from tanks and pipe and all the things you guys do over there at Mattr. We've done expansions with you. We've done a lot of stuff with your company. I know you have been the driving force behind a lot of that and all of the implementation for that sake. But before we get into all these things, Charlene, tell us a little bit about you, your background, and ultimately what you're doing for Mattr.
Okay, great. Thanks for that introduction.
Yeah,
So being the CMMS administrator um, at Mattr means that I am implementing upkeep across all of our sites. So we have right now 8 field sites in North America. My
nice.
role is to go out and train them either on site or online, and then support them remotely with any administrative tasks. So, uploading assets, things like that. But I've been working in the asset management field kind of for over a decade, and my career has brought me to this point where I'm extremely happy working with Upkeep. I've worked with several CMMS programs, and yeah, it's been a journey, but I'm really happy to be here.
Good. Yeah, I know personally, having gone through the succession of different CMMSs as my business grows in the past as a director of maintenance and reliability, a maintenance manager, all that stuff, and just kind of seeing the transition and seeing where you end up with a product, right? And then
Hmm.
looking back, when I got Upkeep after two different products, and looking back on the years where I didn't have it, I was like, man, I wish I would have had this. It would have been so much easier. And it's kind of cool that that's your role. And kudos to Matter, honestly, for having the role and leading and having a tech or having a person that can go around and actually get into the operation, get into the weeds a bit, and ensure that the CMMS is being utilized, deployed, scaled, and adopted correctly. Because let's just be honest, a lot of people buy a CMMS, they think it's a silver bullet, and then they're just like, "Here's your thing, go do your thing," right?
Absolutely.
So I think that's really, really wonderful, and it's a testament to you as well. So I wanted to ask a question.
Yeah.
Thinking about maintenance, you said you've been in asset management for about 10 years or so. How did you get into the field of, let's just say, asset management, maintenance, those types of things?
Yeah, so it happened quite by accident. Um, Back in 2011, I was unemployed and I registered with a few different recruiting agencies, and one of them called me up and they said, "We have this data entry position at a natural gas company." And so, not really knowing what it all entailed, I jumped in. They were doing a massive data collection project in the field and reconciling all their asset records in JD Edwards at the time.
Mhm.
So, and they were preparing to implement Maximo. I stayed with them for 6 months, kind of completed that project, and then found myself a few months after that at their sister oil company um, for their Maximo implementation. So I was an asset data technician, I think that's what they called me there. So I was there for the implementation. I convinced my boss to let me do a little bit of the basic training for Maximo. I love the training aspect. Um, and yeah, I worked really closely with the maintenance schedulers, the reliability engineers in that role. And and then it kind of snowballed. Just my career went to there's a lot of contract work that was happening at that time in oil and gas. So I'd tend to be with a company for 6 months or maybe 2 years and then move somewhere else. So I got a wide range of experience at a number of different companies, but
Right.
mostly in oil and gas. And so when I came to Matter, I wasn't really familiar with the manufacturing industry. So that was a bit of a learning curve, but here I am. I'm enjoying it now.
Yeah. Yeah, I definitely I hear you. And we have lots of customers in oil and gas and even more so in manufacturing. And while the system spans all of the industries, right, there are some nuance, right? I mean, I'm sure now that you're in manufacturing, you see that the planning, scheduling aspect is like super heavy. Oil
Mhm.
and gas, there was probably a lot of regulatory things that needed to be maintained and managed. And manufacturing is a whole nother animal when it comes to production schedules and downtime. And, all these things are aligning all the resources to ensure that the cost of that good that goes out the door is in alignment with where the business wants it to be. And all of the things we do in maintenance plays into that, right?
Yeah, for sure.
Um, so I want to just kind of continue along here. I'm really just interested in what you do, right? And the systems that you've dealt with and what you do for, what you do with upkeep and as it pertains to I'm going to say the people you work with are your customers essentially, right? I mean, you're providing a technical service for the business.
Yeah.
Uh, Go ahead.
So, I mean, as I mentioned, JD Edwards and then Maximo. I've also worked in SAP, sometimes called SAP.
Yeah.
Um,
Did you use
and
the maintenance? Did you use the maintenance module for that or okay, you did.
I did, yeah.
Okay.
Uh, it wasn't my favorite. I'll just leave it at that. Um, and I've worked in MarsWorks a little bit as well.
Mars works. Okay. I
So,
think I've heard of
uh,
that one.
yeah. So those are the ones that I've used. And then when I saw Upkeep, it was, I mean, Upkeep, it was a no-brainer. It was just um, so simple and so user-friendly and made, I've talked about this before, made by maintenance people for maintenance people without all the programming language and all the 15 screens you have to go through to get to where you can put in a work order. And it just made sense.
Yeah. Yeah,
Made
we
sense.
we hear that a lot. And you know, don't get me wrong, I've used other systems as well. I've used eMaint, I've used dabbled in a bit of Maximo, I've used a bunch, right? But
Mhm.
and they provide a function. But when you start looking at how dynamic certain businesses are, and some are multi-site like yours, or some have field service, and then they have manufacturing, and then they have all these things all over the place at all different times. The ability to train and maintain the skills required to utilize that system, it becomes a daunting task. And
Mhm.
I guess kind of going off the rails a bit. What was it about take upkeep out of the equation? What was it about the other systems that you saw was a detriment to where you wanted the maintenance function to be?
Hmm. I think overcomplication was definitely one of those things.
Yeah.
I mentioned I'll keep it simple. So yeah, there was that. There were I found the learning curve to be a lot steeper with Maximo and SAP in particular. Um, yeah, I mean that
What about like
probably.
what about like support? Like if you ran into something using the system that you didn't quite get, like maybe you wanted to build a custom dashboard or a custom report. Is it something that you could do or your team that you trained could do, or did you have to reach out to them and have them do it?
So the company I was at for the Maximo implement, if I wanted a new feature, so I would come across something and say, wouldn't it be good if we could just click a button and it would do this? Then I had to go to my boss. She had to go to the Maximo implementation team. They had to call in their contractors to see if it was something they could add. Whereas now, I joke that I have my customer support manager or customer success manager at Upkeep on speed dial. It's like I just push a button and it's like, hello, can you possibly do this? And by the end of the week, come back with a solution. It's like, yes, that can be done. And sometimes it's not even that long. It's just, oh, that's
Right.
simple. Or maybe it already exists and I just didn't know it. But I did find it was a very complicated, convoluted, and long process to get any kind of new aspect um, implemented within some of those programs.
Yeah. Did they ever charge you for them like ad hoc? Like it was like a la carte where it's like, oh, you can use this, but if you want to use this, then it's you got to buy this module or you got to do this, you got to do that.
That's a really good question. I don't have the answer to because I wasn't the person making those decisions, but
Yeah.
it's quite possible.
Yeah. No worries. No worries. Um, yeah, it's just crazy. It's a wild thing to see all the different types of CMMS, all the different types of functions, all the different ways that they support, the way that they bill you, the way that things are available to the customer. So yeah, it's wild. So I also wanted to ask you, in your role, I think I partially know the answer, but in your role, how has Upkeep optimized or improved your current role. So why is it that upkeep is so beneficial for you, Charlene, as a CMMS administrator?
Hmm. Upkeep is so it has standardized everything across all of our sites, right? So we don't have I don't know. It's an interesting question, Bryan, because I started it wasn't like I was in this role with another CMMS and then we chose Upkeep. I
Right,
started with Upkeep in this role. So I didn't see how maintenance was done really across the company. I was in a different department, and they
right,
created this role for me as a CMMS administrator because the executive leadership team realized that we needed a preventative maintenance program. There wasn't one in place. Some of the guys had PMs in a binder,
that's
you
common.
know, in a shelf on a shelf somewhere. And
Yeah.
I remember going to one site and asking them, "Well, can I see your binder?" And it was pages and pages and pages of PMs. I'm like, "Do you have this in like in a digital format? Is it in Excel?" And they said, "Yeah, I can send it." Perfect. So then I had to take everything from Excel, kind of transfer it over. We had one group that was using Hippo, which I had never seen before for
I've
their
only had
workflow.
a limited experience with them. It's yeah.
So I think the challenge in the beginning for me, and I took it on wholeheartedly, was to standardize everything across all the sites so that all of our tank sites, all of our pipe sites, they're a little bit different from each other, but all our tank sites were doing the same thing, preventative maintenance on the same sort of schedule. And because they all have pretty much the same equipment. I mean, it's like a Walmart, they're all laid out the
Right.
same, every single one's the
That's
same.
that's perfect.
Yeah, I mean, they may have, as Walmart may have a bit more square footage in one store or the other. Like some of our tank sites have a few more molding stations for creating the tanks, but by and large, they're all the same. And so getting them kind of all on the same page, and it's made things a lot easier across the company. And then we have a biweekly meeting with all the maintenance supervisors where they can get together with myself and my boss, and we talk through any issues they're having, any questions, any comments, any suggestions. And I've had suggestions come from them that I've taken to our customer success manager, and they've been implemented, and it's fantastic. So shout out to you guys
Say their
for your
name. Who is
work.
it?
Yeah, it's Diego.
Awesome. Awesome.
Yeah, Diego's fantastic. Um, and yeah, I mean, I think it's just compared to other roles where I've been working with other CMSs, it's just been so much easier and such a pleasure to work with you guys.
Yeah. Do you find that because you've made standardization the priority in the beginning, which is what you should do, right? Do you find that all the different sites are kind of speaking the same language now that
Hmm.
everything is in the system is standardized across all these facilities? Like they're calling things the same thing. They have the right nomenclature for this. They have the same PM type and name and task was in the PM. Do you see that?
Hmm. Absolutely. Like we copy and paste checklists across sites so that
Perfect.
they're all doing the same checklist of maintenance items on the same piece of equipment.
Right. Do you ever get revisions where they'll say, "Hey, this we've done this PM so many times, and we find a failure, we find an issue, we want to change something, we want to add this instead." Do you guys do like constantly revisit your PMs as well to ensure they're creating value?
Yeah, it happens from time to time. I've had
Good.
some call me up and say, we don't really need this task, or can we just remove it? And they're administrators. Every site has an administrator, so they can do it themselves, or I can do it for them. And yeah,
Cool.
and then if we're going to standardize, I'm the administrator, like super user across all of our different sites, and so I can go in and change it for the other ones for them. But
Right.
yeah, we're
That's awesome.
definitely always looking for improvement, continuous improvement in what we do in our product and our service. And um, like you said, the maintenance teams are my internal customers. So whenever I can make something better for them or easier for them, then that's what I'm here for.
Yeah,
I'm all
100%.
about it.
We
Hmm.
want to, and I say this so much, but like it rings home true with every business is with CMMS, we want it to enable the way work is actually done. We
Hmm.
don't want it to create new things that are going to inhibit work,
Hmm.
right? Because at the end of the day, the technician's jobs, the supervisor's jobs, their job is to maintain that operational capacity.
Hmm.
And if we're making them jump through hoops to interact with a system that's ultimately providing value for the business and the department, then they're not going to do it. Or it's going to be watered down. I'm sure, I know when I was implementing Upkeep around the country, I was always in there looking to see how guys are filling work orders out. Did they use the right codes? Did they make pictures? Did they do all these things? So I'm sure you've done that too, and you kind of have to, at least in the beginning, you have to course correct.
A little bit, yeah.
Yeah. So like I would read some work orders and I'd see an issue and I'd send a message to that person like, "Hey man, make sure that we're doing A, B, C, and D." And then I would check the next few and good to go. And then you're just kind of course correcting because CMMS is one of those things where if you're doing it really, really bad for a really long time, it hurts a lot. And to try
hmm
to go back is like almost not going to happen,
Yeah.
you know? So that course correction is super important. And it's awesome that you guys are continually trying to optimize it. That's a massive advantage for you all. And how many sites did you say you guys have that are using Upkeep?
8 right now.
Nice. Awesome. And you
hmm
said they have similar equipment, similar type of operations, but there's between two different types of business, right?
Yeah, so Xerxes is our tank division, and Xerxes manufactures fiberglass storage tanks for fuel and water and
Okay.
hydrogen solutions for stormwater management.
Okay.
So that's what we call the tank side. And
Okay.
then FlexPipe manufactures spoolable composite line pipe solutions.
Okay.
So
And
uh,
is it equal 4 and 4 for
no, it's
sites?
6 tank and 2 pipe right now.
6 tank and 2 pipe. Cool.
Yeah,
And
and
are they throughout the United States and Canada or just Canada?
no, most of them are in the U.S.
Most are in the
and
US.
then we
Okay.
have 2 in Canada.
Oh, cool. Awesome. For everybody listening,
Sorry, 3. There's 3 in Canada.
okay.
Sorry. Yeah,
No worries. Charlene and I actually met, I want to say 8 months ago, 9 months ago,
yeah, probably.
at the end of last year. Charlene had come to Upkeep's consulting calls, which is where Upkeep customers have the opportunity to speak with me about anything. It doesn't have to be Upkeep. It can be maintenance. It can be leadership, be whatever. And Charlene logged on. There was a couple other people there. They logged off. Charlene and I talked for an hour about everything maintenance, everything Upkeep, expansion. She was working on several projects to expand Upkeep's footprint, and she was successful. And that is wonderful. And I just thought that was really cool. It's funny because when Maria had mentioned that Charlene was going to be on the podcast, and she said the company name, I'm like, I feel like I've talked to her before.
Yeah, and I so appreciated that hour with you. I should log on more often to those calls,
Oh,
but it was great to have you all to myself to be able to ask all the questions I wanted, and you know, you were quite helpful in
yeah,
that
I
time.
appreciate that. That's the whole point, right? It's like it's just another resource to ensure because look, the people at Upkeep know the Upkeep system. There's no question, right? But at the end of
Mhm.
the day, sometimes it takes some experience in the maintenance realm and the reliability realm to help guide the best aspects of your business that pertain to Upkeep. And that's why I offer this service for Upkeep customers is like, look, Upkeep can get you set to the max with utilizing Upkeep. But there may be some things that from the bigger business that don't make sense. And how do they integrate? And how should I pitch this idea? How should I get buy-in here? All those things. And I'm so glad that we were able to help you in that endeavor. Um, so I guess really, Charlene, my kind of last structured question is why Upkeep? I know you mentioned that you started and came into Upkeep, right? Or did you have a chance, or were you part of the selection of Upkeep to start at Mattr?
I was part of the selection.
Okay, cool. So then
So the
why Upkeep?
um, a few reasons. So one is that a couple of our sites were already using it and had some
Oh, cool.
experience with it, and I was not familiar with Upkeep at that time. And so when one of the managers came and said, "Hey, we've been using Upkeep. Maybe we should take a look at this." We were looking at IFS and a couple other ones um, as possibilities. And thankfully, the executive leadership team brought me into the decision, which I really appreciated because I'm the one who's going to be using it the most,
That's right.
right? I had to learn it, and then I had to teach it. And so I was part of that selection. And I think, I've not to sound like a broken record, but it was the simplicity. It
Yeah.
was, this is in the language of maintenance people. It's not programmers. You don't have to know all these codes. You don't have to do anything special except flip open your phone and take a picture of something, and here's your work order or
Right.
your request, right? And then it just makes sense. It just is so user friendly, and that's the feedback I've gotten from across all the sites I've trained as well. They kind of look at me in disbelief, and I say, okay, that's it. That's how you use it. And they're like, what? Are we going to spend like 3 more days in training? I'm like, no, no. This is, so um, I think that was, the fact that we had been already using it at a couple of sites and they were self-taught, but also the fact that it was just so simple and fit with what we needed.
Sure.
The mobile aspect definitely was a big piece of that. That the guys could have a phone or a tablet right on the maintenance floor, snap a picture of something, get to a safe place, and then put in their work order or whatever. Um, and so that was, yeah, I would say that was the crux of our decision, really.
Yeah. So do you get the same feedback across the board, like from supervisors using it, maintenance managers using it, and technicians using it? Like it's pretty much accepted?
Hmm. It is, and I'm not a salesperson, but there's a little bit of the sell-in. I need to get the buy-in, the
Sure.
adoption when I go out to a site because
Yes.
if they don't want to use it, it doesn't matter how well I train them. They're
That's
not
right.
it's not they're just going to shut it off when I leave. So um, I try to do a bit of that with them and explain, like we talk about even preventative maintenance, because most of the sites until Upkeep was implemented didn't have preventative maintenance. So we talk about the advantages of maintaining equipment preventatively. And then I show them the software, show them the web app, I show them the mobile app. And I say, this is, only as good as the data we put in. So this is what we need to put in it to make sure we're getting out what we need to get out, in analytics. And so that um, at the end of the day, we can show the executive, this is what we're doing. This is how this is working for us. And
Right.
they're going to want to keep it rolling.
Right.
Yeah.
And ultimately how it benefits the technician, right? How it's
Mhm.
how they're able to quantify the great and hard work they're doing every single day. How they're able to quantify a shortage in manpower. How they're able
Mhm.
to quantify a machine that's taking up all of the resources and manpower because it needs to be replaced. You know, I've implemented Upkeep and several others at many, many locations, and always tying that system's success and benefits back to the core user, which in this case is a technician,
Mhm.
is super beneficial in further adoption. So eventually you get to this autonomous state where a guy's working on a machine and another technician says, "Hey, are you on a work order right now?" So it becomes like self-governing
Mhm.
where they automatically, like when someone's working on something and they're not on a work order, they go, "Whoa, crap, I didn't open a work order." So it's always like, and I say this a lot as well, in these instances, in what you do, and you can take this and use it, we speak in work orders now. That's
Mhm.
our language. Our
Yeah.
language is work orders, right?
Mhm.
Well,
Yeah. Yeah. And
it,
it's I don't know what the word is, but it makes me happy when I leave. I'm getting ready to leave a site and I've done the training and I'm saying my goodbyes to the team and we'll see you online and all of that. And they're like, hey, look, I just put in this request, or and they're like proud of themselves because they've started using it before I'm even gone from their site. They're already putting work requests in and having them turned into work orders and closing them out and doing the work right there. And they're proud of themselves for doing it, and I'm proud of them for doing it, and it's win-win.
yeah. Do you
And I know my
find,
training was effective.
right? And also, kind of leading into that, it's like, do you find the more and more you train the team and the more different things come up, different perspectives, different thought processes, different people, egos, all these things, do you find that you yourself are getting better at not only utilizing upkeep, but applying it to the business?
Oh, for sure. Definitely. Yeah, I mean, my training builds, right? Like from the time I started this in January 2023, my boss and I implemented the first new site in February. So I had a month to learn upkeep and then be ready to teach it. And then we did another one in April, and then he sent me on my own at the end of May, right? So it was like, okay, you can fly with this now. And I found that every training built on the next one. And my most recent one was just a little over a month ago. And I'm able to take every training and add more into it. And I'm able to use examples from, hey, the team over there, they're finding this really works for them. So let's go with that. And yeah, it keeps building.
Yeah. I used to do the same thing. I would take even examples. If I found really good examples of a work order completion, I would
Hmm.
screenshot it. And even if I found bad one, right, I would screenshot it. And the training I do be like, hey, tell me what's wrong with this work order. Or
Hmm.
hey, what's really good about this work order? I would, of course, blot the names out. If they were in the room, they knew who it was anyway, right?
Right.
Um, but sometimes it's good to have that line of sight so that not only are you like you're building off of each training, but every time they see you or interact with you, they'll know, well, okay, she might be looking at my stuff. I've got to do the right things. I've got to make sure I've got the right data. I'm following the initial instructions that I've been given.
Hmm. And there's something to be said for um, hopping off of that team building. Being for me going to their site and training with them in person, I think is really beneficial because it builds that relationship.
Yes.
Whereas I'm not just somebody behind a computer screen, usually with the camera off, um, right? Who
Yeah.
they don't know and haven't seen and don't care about. Now I've been there. I've met them in person. I've taken them out for lunch. I've wined and dined them and talked about their life, asked about their families, and
Yes.
really gotten to know them. And
Yes.
now I can call them up and say, "Hey, I'm waiting on this list of assets." And they're like, "Oh, shoot, I forgot that." But it's not like they know me, right? It's not like they're avoiding me. I hope not.
Yeah, they're
Anyway.
not like, who's this pushy lady who's bothering me, right?
Exactly.
Yes, yes.
Exactly.
That's paramount. I mean, that's leadership 101, right? Leadership 101 is know your people and be invested in them, right? And be genuinely interested in who they are. And when you do that, there's so many walls that just fall down naturally. And they know you're there and that you're behind the scenes and you're structuring and you're ensuring the standardization and the data quality and all these things. So if they act accordingly, they know that there's a person behind that, right?
Hmm.
But also if they don't act accordingly, they know there's a person behind that who now has a relationship with you who could be like, hey man, what the fuck or what are you doing? Sorry. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
It's like there's
absolutely.
that relationship and that trust that's been built, and you're able to both mutually capitalize on that relationship.
Hmm. And I've traveled to all of our sites in Canada and the US at least once, one of them twice, and I'm hoping to make another pass. Now we've done the implementation everywhere, so now there are some things we want to tighten up. We want to get into using meters. We've been talking about not Microsoft Edge, but UpKeep Edge,
Sure,
right? So it's almost like an onion. We're starting now to peel layers. So we've got the basic outside layer of training. This is how you create a work order. This is how you close it. This is how you load assets, all of that stuff. And now we're going to dig
sure,
deeper because there are so many layers to upkeep that we haven't touched yet. I mean, even within analytics, there's a lot of things that we can just data that we can pull out of analytics and how we're going to use that um, to, like you said, to quantify what we're really doing and compare it across sites if necessary. And you know, I think use it for as part of our continuous improvement for maintenance.
sure. Are you guys using the inventory functions across all the sites?
Some sites are using it. Um, we've been working on first getting, obviously, we need assets in there so we can do a work order on the asset.
Sure,
I've trained everyone on the parts and inventory. Some of them are using it, some of them haven't quite gotten there. So
sure.
that's again part of our continuous improvement.
Yeah, yeah. No worries. And
Mhm.
it's important to recognize the steps in
Mhm.
your maintenance maturity, and not skip those steps.
Correct. Yeah.
Because there's a lot of swirl surrounding technology, sensors, AI, push, 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 push. And at the end of the day, technicians don't know why they're creating a work order, or they don't know what it does once they've hits complete.
Hmm.
So the fact that you're focusing ultimately, like arguably for the last year, you've been focusing on standardizing the structure of the maintenance systems from assets to preventive maintenance to requests and getting that ingrained into the business is paramount because then you've built that bottom foundational layer to then move up to the next thing.
Hmm.
So that one won't fall apart underneath of you. Um, are people outside the maintenance organization using upkeep for like the request functions or anything like operations people or anything?
Some of them are.
Cool.
Um, yeah, we train all of our production supervisors, production managers, um, even our quality engineers are using it to track things like calibration.
Perfect.
So yeah, they're putting all the calibration instruments in and then using PMs to track, the regulatory requirements of if something needs to be calibrated every 6 months or every 3 months, or right, they get a PM that triggers and tells them you need to send this out for calibration, or call the contractor to come in and calibrate it. So yeah, quality is taking it and running with it as well.
Awesome.
Yeah.
That's great. Yeah, and that's the thing. Like, we go to a lot of trade shows, and I'll talk to prospects, and they'll be like, "Oh, we're just this." And it's funny you use calibration as one because I spoke to a company that does um, is a lab. They do lab work for something, but they've got all these machines, and they're like, "Oh, we're just a lab. We don't have a use for maintenance software." And I'm like, "Do your lab things need to be calibrated? Do they break? Do they wear out?" And they're like, "Yeah." I said, "Well, it's just like any other asset, right? It's just like any other piece of machinery." And they were like super intrigued by Upkeep because they, like you said, they can walk around on their phone and be like, boop, take a picture, add an asset, like all these things. And it was a small mom and pop lab, and it was just so funny. It's crazy the applications that can be had from a CMMS.
No, absolutely. And I just thought of another one while you were talking there. Our HSE department, they have a calendar of compliance. So, for instance, air conditioning units need to be inspected once a year.
Yep.
Fire extinguishers need to be inspected. So they're using Upkeep PMs to trigger and let them know that they're due for inspection with those as well.
Perfect. You know, the HSE technicians slash managers at a lot of the facilities I used to lead would have the Upkeep app, and they found if they would find nonconformities, they would take a picture, request that it be repaired. We had a category for safety,
Hmm.
and then they would give it a severity level, and then they would submit it, and then the planner would see those things, or the supervisor would see those things, and would schedule them accordingly.
Hmm.
That's great. Yeah, the more it gets woven into the business, like you're doing with quality, with safety, with op supervisors, the more it becomes uh, actionable, right? People are going to want to use it. It's going to be something that is not looked upon as like separate from the business, that it is the business. And we always like to say that it creates this common language amongst the organization,
Hmm.
you know,
Yeah.
which is awesome. So, Charlene, I it has been wonderful talking to you for the second time, this time on the Pledge Pros podcast. And I'm so grateful for Maria for connecting with us. And I just wanted to give you the last word, Charlene. How, if people are interested in learning more about you, your story, Mattr, how can they get a hold of you?
You can reach me at charlene.crocker@mattr.com. So Mattr is spelled Mattr. There's no E. We just had to be a little bit unique in that. So yeah, you can definitely reach me there if you want to connect. And gosh, it's been the last year and a half has just been amazing, honestly, with Upkeep. Everything from the product to the team behind it to, being able to chat with someone like you for twice now, but like, for that whole hour and just getting the questions answered and being able to bring our suggestions and they're taken seriously. It's not like, oh, she's nagging again. We can't really do that or whatever. The answer is always, I will see if we can find a way. and I know that they're looking for a way to implement what we're asking for, and to keep us happy. And it's that, what did you say? Unmatched.
Unmatched value and unwavering support.
There we go. Yeah. So thank you for that. I really appreciate you having me on to talk about what's happening at Mattr. And yeah.
You are very welcome. And on behalf of Upkeep, thank you. And we will see you on the next one.
All
Bye,
right.
Charlene.
Sounds good. Thanks, Bryan. Bye bye.